Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reawaken Your Brilliance. I'm back on the East Coast, so we won't be hearing the Queen Mary blare in the background and no airplanes overhead. So we're back, and I'm excited to be here. We've got a great show for you tonight. Here's my thought for tonight. Forgive yourself and everyone around you. When you judge others, you are the one who feels pain. Through forgiveness, all pain disappears. So you can chew on that for a moment as I want to give you a little bit of information about our wonderful speaker tonight. Susan Hannibal is a gifted medical intuitive, healer, author, and teacher in international private practice since 1999. Her intuitive readings, knowing only her client's name and age, are stunningly detailed and accurate. Her expert facilitation skills and spiritual guidance lead clients into healing childhood trauma, panic attacks, phobias, and combat stress. Safe, non-drug, evidence-based energy psychology methods such as EFT bring deep, permanent transformation. Her second book, Emotional Detox, Healing the Traumas That Make You Fat, Harm Your Body, and Poison Your Life, is in progress. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, Julie. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we're excited to learn about EFT tonight. Before we talk about EFT, I'd like you to just talk about yourself a little bit. I know you personally and have worked with you professionally. One of the reasons for doing this show is I want to inspire people and say, hey, there are people out there who've gone through tough times and have come out and they're in the brilliance and you can do it too. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you were doing prior to doing EFT and energy psychology?
Sure. I've been an author for about 25 years, and I got on this path I would say, as a result of a spiritual crisis. Maybe some of your readers have heard about the dark night of the soul. Mm-hmm. And I went through a divorce, and all of a sudden, everything just collapsed in my life within the space of about 2 weeks. It was very disorienting, as sometimes happens with a dark night experience. And that resulted in going into learning Reiki and a complete spiritual reawakening. Mm-hmm. I went to a Reiki teacher who was able to show me how to get in touch with my intuition that I'd had all my life. And I think that everyone does have intuition, and you can reawaken it. You can exercise it like a muscle, and it can become very much like a laser. So the process for me was one step forward, two back. It was very depressing for a while. It was a classic dark night of the soul, but I'd go through it again in a heartbeat for the satisfaction that I've had with helping people heal over these years.
I think that's a great point, Sue. And speaking from personal experience, and I know with a lot of clients you've worked with, I think so many times we're so afraid to feel the pain because we fear we'll die. We just can't simply live through that again or feel that pain. So instead, we push it down, or we use eating or drugs or whatever to deal with that. And we're miserable, except what we think going through the pain is going to be even worse. And yet it isn't. And then when you come through on the other side, it's just like a completely different life.
It is. I think that everyone needs to go through an experience like that in order to come into the fullness of their gifts, and many people do. The people that I've been able to help heal themselves usually come to me after they've been through years, sometimes months or years of therapy. Sometimes they're ill, their lives aren't working, they're stuck in destructive emotional patterns. Sometimes they're caught up in addictions. They just sometimes have nowhere to look but up. Mm-hmm. And somehow they're either referred or they find me on the net or something. And many of the people that come to me end up to be in the archetype of the wounded healer, mm-hmm. which is your destiny or your sole purpose in this life is to help heal others, but you have to go through the fire yourself first. And every good healer that I know has been to hell and back, mm-hmm. and seems to be part of the path.
I agree. I think that's a great point. So tell us about EFT. It's not electronic fund transfer. That's one acronym for us, but we're going to talk tonight about the EFT that you do. So tell us about EFT and what it stands for.
Well, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And the short version of it's acupressure or acupuncture without the needles. It's based on the acupuncture system, and the theory being that blocked energy causes emotional dysfunction. It can cause physical pain or physical dysfunction, and releasing the blocks and restoring the free flow of energy, or what the Chinese call qi, leads to healing. So when you are doing EFT, there's 14 points that you tap that are on the face, the hands, and the trunk. And each one of those points corresponds to one of the meridian systems in the Chinese system of acupuncture. A meridian is an invisible energy pathway. It's like an invisible circulatory system. It won't show up on an autopsy, but that's the system that the Chinese have discovered, and it's what acupuncturists use. So the key to doing EFT effectively is to be very specific and to focus on the problem when you're tapping.
And tapping.
So in other words, if you had, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say tapping is another way that people often refer to EFT.
Yeah, it's become a shortcut nickname, tapping, for it, because that's what you're doing. You're using your fingertips, and you start on the side of your hand, which we call a setup, and you say even though, and state the problem. So say, even though I have this headache. And if the headache had an emotional component, I might say, what emotion is attached to your headache? And you might say stress or anger or sadness. So you'd say, even though I have this anger, stress, headache, I accept myself. I'm doing the best I can, or some type of self-affirming statement. And then you start tapping on the points on the eyebrow, eyebrow where your hair starts, this headache, outside the eye, right here on the side of your temple.
And this is the order that you would do the tapping, correct?
Right. Underneath the pupil on the bone, that's the stomach meridian. Sometimes you'll feel something in your stomach like anxiety or stress. Under the nose, under the lip, the collarbone where it connects to your sternum, under the arm about 4 inches down, that's your spleen meridian. And then the fingertips, the side of the thumb, side of the fingers. You skip this finger here because you're going to get it on the back side of the hand. That's fight or flight, the triple warmer side of the pinky. And then when you're tapping on the back of your hand, that point it's going to help you to balance the brain around the issue that you've got, that you're working on, and it's going to bring down the affect. It's going to balance and release the charge. So when you're tapping, you're going to balance your brain by doing this. You shut your eyes, you continuously keep tapping, shut your eyes, open your eyes, you keep thinking and talking about the problem, this headache. You look down to the right, you look down to the left, this stress headache, and then you roll your eyes in a circle, one direction and then the other, very slow, while you continue to tap and hum a few notes.
Why are you doing this? Why are you looking to the left, the right, rolling, humming? How's that related?
That's a balancing in the brain through the optic nerve. A lot of trauma can be imprinted through what you see, and it can be unwound and released that way as well. I have some additional techniques that I use with people that have been traumatized through using the optic nerve and blinking and stuff to, release that. Mm-hmm. So as you're tapping, before you start tapping, you should try to come up with a baseline for how you feel about the problem. Is this a 10, the worst thing that's ever happened? Is it a 0? Is it a 5? Where is it? And then I ask them, where is it in the body? Because that's a big clue. That leads us into metaphor language, which is part of the intuitive diagnosis that I do and that I teach people to do.
Well, we'll definitely want to talk about that. Well, I think we'll get to that later. But if you can continue with EFT and the humming, is there anything else besides rolling the eyes and that you do with the tapping?
Right, you're humming and counting and rolling your eyes, which is balancing, and then you go back and start tapping again. And then you say this remaining headache, stress, anxiety, whatever it is, and you balance your system one more time. And then you take another look at the problem or the pain and determine if it's come down from where it was. Say it was an 8. It might come down to a 5 or 6, or it might release completely. When you tune back in, the area of your body where you felt the charge might be a 0, it might be a little bit, or it might have moved. Sometimes energy moves, and then the emotion will move. Somebody will say, well, I haven't thought about this in 20 years, but now as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about when this happened. And then we go to the next
Mm-hmm.
level. It's very fascinating how energy moves.
Now, how did EFT? Who created that? Because you've mentioned meridians, which a lot, if people are aware of acupuncture, it's used a lot there. How was EFT created?
EFT is a cousin of thought field therapy. Thought field therapy was the original discovery
Mm-hmm.
between tapping and releasing emotion. That was discovered by a psychologist in California by the name of Roger Callahan. And then Gary Craig, who is the founder of EFT, took some direction or some classes from Roger Callahan. And he decided that rather than use a certain recipe or tapping points for each emotion, which they call them algorithms, he said, well, why don't we just sweep the system? That way, wherever this is stuck, it'll go.
Hey,
And
so
you don't have to diagnose the points. You just sweep the system and balance it every time, and that gets results. It's simpler.
oh, okay, because I knew there was a similarity to that, but wondered how they were connected. We actually have a question for you from Kessa. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. If a person is doing
Okay.
EFT without guidance, is there any way they can make things worse? For example, can a person tap the wrong place or say the wrong thing and make the emotional problem worse? Great question.
In my experience, no. Sometimes you should probably not try to self-treat the worst thing that's ever happened in your life by
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You can get carried away and what they call flood, which is become emotionally overwhelmed. But
Mm-hmm.
generally, the tapping will balance and release and lower your affect or the emotional sting or charge. So no, it's safe to do anything like that on your own, and you can't do anything wrong. If you tap on the wrong place, nothing will happen. You really can't do it wrong.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. And I want to definitely at some point talk about trauma, but can you just give everyone some examples of how you've used EFT to help people? Like what it's helped cure or get better or release?
There's been so many unusual cases. When I'm working in California, there's a few doctors and psychiatrists that send patients to me. And they send patients to me because they've done everything medically or with medication that they know about, and the person is not getting better. So that's when the intuition kicks in and it becomes a tool to find out what are the hidden roots of this problem. The hidden roots can be, in my experience, things like past life, the womb experience,
Mm-hmm.
the birth experience is huge for phobias, especially, and panic attacks, and childhood. There's sometimes in childhood, the younger that you are, the more vulnerable that you are, and the more helpless that you are. So if something happens to a 10-year-old, it might be upsetting, but it could be a psychiatric disaster if you're 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how long ago, not how long ago, how often the trauma happened, how young you were, how bad it was. Those are the things that we look at in terms of treatment. So, for example, I treated an Army officer
Mm-hmm.
that had 8 years of panic disorder, and he had been everywhere and done everything, and nothing would work. So when I was with him, I didn't do a reading, but I tuned in and was kind of reading his energy a little bit as we were talking. And I asked him about repetitive dreams. And he told me he had a lot of dreams about being locked in a small space, like a suitcase. And so as we were chatting, I started to get this very strong, this had to do with his birth. I asked him if he knew the circumstances, and he said really no. I said, well, call your mother. So his mother said, well, 3 days of labor, a forceps delivery is what happened to him.
Oh my
Now
gosh.
his ideations, his disruptive thoughts that would trigger the panic were, I'm dying, I'm suffocating, the whole world is dying. That sounds an awful lot like what a tiny baby would be thinking or feeling in the womb. He's being assaulted with the energy of his poor mother after the 3rd day. You know, she must be thinking, am I going to die? Is he going to die?
Right.
There's no food. Stress chemicals are assaulting him biochemically. So we did a procedure where we treated his experience in the womb. and his panic attacks cleared in an hour and a half, one session.
We have actually a caller on the line, Sue, so I want to have them ask their question.
Sure.
Hello, good evening. Is our caller there? It looks like they might have. They're still there, but we can't. Well, we can't hear anything on this end. I'll just remind everyone, if you'd like to call in and ask Sue a question, you can ask a question via chat. You can Skype in at computers, the number 2no, or call 919-576-9549 or 919-851-3858.
One correction, if you want to use Skype, Computer 2K voice, because Sue isn't Computers 2K now.
That's why Amnon does a computer in the direction and I don't, folks. So it looks like we lost the caller, but that's, I think, Sue, a wonderful example of how you use EFT. But could you use EFT, say, for if someone wanted help losing weight, or you've mentioned anxiety and phobia, things like that, or if they had maybe a car accident and there was something left over from that, or those are the types of things that people could benefit from using EFT?
Absolutely. Gary Craig's, I guess, motto is try it on everything. So anytime that there's a trauma, there's a fear, a craving, addictive cravings will release relatively quickly with EFT. It's not a treatment for the addiction per se, but if you're being tormented by cravings for nicotine or a drink or chocolate or potato chips, whatever it is, your energy system is disrupted. And that produces anxiety, and that makes you want to do something or take something or eat something, whatever, to calm it. And if you're doing tapping on the craving, you would just say, even though I have this craving for, and then fill in the blank, let's say chocolate, even though I have this craving for chocolate, even though I really want this chocolate, even though I'd kill for this chocolate, get really into it. This chocolate is a 10. I have to have this chocolate. I accept myself even though I have this craving. And then tap this craving for chocolate. I really want this chocolate. I can just smell it and taste it. I got to have it. And you'll feel the calm begin.
That's a great reminder. That you
with
can
cigarettes,
use.
It might last a while.
That's fantastic. And we have a nice compliment about you, Sue, I'd like to share with you that Barbara wrote. I have received Sue Hannibal's skills. She is highly skilled, and I can't say enough good things about her, the good results I've experienced in my life. So I just wanted to share that with you. A nice compliment for you here on the chat room.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some dealing with combat stress and trauma. People should definitely check out your site. You've done a lot of amazing work with people in the military. So I'd love to hear you talk about the work that you've done with soldiers and PTSD, because I think that's you've had some amazing results with that.
Yes, the war zone experience where you are in combat or have grown up in your own home has some common denominators to it. When I treat a soldier, I will start with the deepest, most difficult emotion or wounding that they have, which is usually survival. Sometimes I'll just start tapping and I'll just say, Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever they were, I thought they were going to kill me. I thought I'd never get out of there alive, because there's nothing deeper than survival. So when you start talking about survival and just kind of soften the field about their fears of survival, I could never relax. I could never let my guard down. IEDs, bombs, rockets, mortars, whatever. And that kind of tunes in the field to how their struggle for survival is the signature of a deployment to a war zone. So I start with survival. And then if they had a decent childhood, I will take them into the worst thing that ever happened. Now, when you're in training for psychology, as I have been, they tell you don't go to the worst thing that ever happened to someone, because the person will flood, they'll become overwhelmed. Well, with the EFT, they don't flood, because you're releasing and softening and releasing and taking it down as you're going through the strength of the emotion. And there's also techniques that we use, one of which is the movie technique, to take someone one dimension away, almost one aspect away. If that was a movie, what would be the title? So they're thinking about it a little bit,
taking a step back.
Yeah, getting a little bit of distance from it. Sometimes some people that I've treated for combat stress have cleared in 1 or 2 sessions, and then will come back later because it sounds too good to be true. It really does, and I understand the skepticism. When I first heard this, I thought it was the nuttiest thing I ever heard. So, you know, the literature says there is no cure for PTSD. Well, yes, there is, and this is one of them. So when we take them into the worst thing that ever happened and they clear in 1 session, you want to go back over the territory and have them talk about anything else that has happened and see if there's any charge to it. It's almost like pulling a huge fuse and then 8 circuits that are on that fuse go down.
That's a great analogy, and I want to stress something that you and I had talked about the other night and that you mentioned during this, that EFT is not going to get rid of the trauma or what happened, but rather diffuse it, make sure that I'm saying that correctly, because that's the whole point. So for instance, I know I'm an emotional eater. If I get upset about something, where's the Ben and Jerry's? I can't find it fast enough. So the point would be to not need the Ben and Jerry's, but rather, okay, I went through this trauma. It's just kind of like I went through my day, I brushed my teeth, and kind of having the same effect. Oh, I brushed my teeth. Big deal. So, but it's more about diffusing it so it doesn't cause you to run to the Ben and Jerry's or to have nightmares or to have anxiety attacks.
Well, it's about managing your energy. Every day things take us up and down and here and there, and you know, we live in a stressful world. So at any time you may find yourself reacting or being triggered by something. It could be something as simple as getting a phone call that you don't want to get, or something comes in the mail, or somebody cuts you off in traffic. It can be big things and little things that will disrupt your energy system. The point is to keep yourself centered and calm and to rebalance yourself. Stress takes us off balance. EFT rebalances us. So you would tap on what is causing you to want the Ben and Jerry's, and then the need for the Ben and Jerry's.
Fantastic. Now I have a question. Can you? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, then you might have to tap on, I don't want to get over this. I want the ice cream.
Well, you know, that might be the case with me, I have to admit. But hopefully, that's a great reminder. As I've mentioned, I worked with Sue about a year, ended probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And so it was a great reminder that tapping can help with cravings. So I believe I'm probably not alone. There are a lot of us out there that have a lot of cravings.
I just wanted to remind everybody that if you want to call in, you can dial 919-851-3858 or 919-576-9549. That's all.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So, Sue, how does someone, is there a licensure for having EFT? Or are you trained? How does that work? I'd like people to understand that.
Well, since it's a holistic self-healing technique, there is no licensing. It's in the public domain. Anyone can learn it. Anyone can use it for themselves or others. Kids love it. You can use it for animals surrogately. There's no professional, well, there is a certification program that some of the agencies are offering now. The Emotional Freedom Technique has, I think it's EFTuniverse.com has a certification program. Some of the other groups have certification, but there's no actual licensing. If you wanted to set up a business in it, you'd have to just get a business license and be very careful with not going outside your scope of practice.
Okay, fantastic. And I know you have like a degree in psychology. You studied a couple other things, so you're a little more broad-based than someone, say, who just does EFT. And if people go to their site, they can see everything that you've done. Let's see. I lost my train of thought.
I haven't actually finished the degree, but I've finished so many classes. I probably have the equivalent of a master's, but I haven't actually finished the degree.
Okay, well, I've worked with her, so it's kind of like Bill Gates. I trust him with computers. I trust Sue with EFT. You had mentioned when we talked the other day, tell us about the Soul Medicine Institute.
The Soul Medicine Institute is running a program that is researching the efficacy of EFT with combat post-traumatic stress disorder. And the website for that is stressproject.org. and they're giving veterans who have PTSD 6 free sessions with coaches all around the country, some of whom are licensed and some are coaches like myself. And they are tabulating the results. So far, the results, I believe the figure is 63% reduction in symptoms in less than 6 sessions.
That's fantastic. And I know when I saw you speak a couple years ago, there was a tape and they had veterans from all wars. They had from Vietnam, from the Gulf War, who some with years of PTSD and some who had just experienced recently. And what the veterans had to say was amazing. Can you just tell us a little bit? You sent me an entire document on all the wonderful research that's out there. But what I think so fascinating about EFT and would love for people to know is there's been a lot of research on it that shows, hey, this stuff works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stressproject.org and I believe it was Gary Craig had the documentary movie was made. That website is at operation-emotionalfreedom.com. It's a film called The Answer. So several veterans were invited to come to California. Some of them were from Vietnam, and these guys had been suffering for upwards of 35 years. Their PTSD was just as acute as it had been right after the war. There was also veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan and the 91 Gulf, as you mentioned. So they sat down with some coaches and they filmed the sessions. And those guys in the beginning, there's a shot in the beginning where they're all sitting there listening and they have nasty looks on their faces. They're bored, they're skepticism. They've got their arms crossed, their jaw set. They don't want to have anything to do with any of this. It's nonsense. And then at the end, they're at peace and they can't say enough about what EFT has done for them. So we're hoping the VA will catch on to that someday.
Hopefully we can keep our fingers crossed. And I actually have a question that was sent in. Someone couldn't listen in tonight but had a question, so I'm going to read that to you. Much of what therapists and coaches can help to heal is mostly within the conscious mind. However, some trauma becomes repressed. The person doesn't remember the trauma they experienced because the mind hides it. And not just suppressed, the person remembers the trauma but intentionally puts it aside. Sometimes people have behaviors and symptoms without knowing why, which leads us to believe a trauma was repressed. Can EFT help to release repressed and unremembered trauma by the client?
Yes. That takes a little bit more skill and expertise in handling trauma. And I would say that there is a perception that has to be addressed with the client. They may not remember what happened, but they're suffering the effects of it. Say, for example, sexual abuse is a classic situation where someone will dissociate, which means check out of their body and become disconnected from their self or from present time reality, because the circumstance that they're going through is too overwhelming. The psyche can't take it, so it checks you out as a protective. It's like a circuit breaker, takes you out of it. So when something like that has happened, the person will usually have a set of symptoms that are very indicative that that's the problem. So you would, in some cases, treat the symptoms. And sometimes that will lead to a memory, or even if they don't remember it, you can still go in deep enough through various ways to put out that fire and release the trauma. I have developed a situation, I don't know, it's a technique, or it came to me one day in a session intuitively that this person was stuck in childhood at various ages. They were like little other people that were in the session, but they weren't there presently with us. There was somebody that was 2, somebody that was 8, and I just became aware of these other parts of this person, the dissociated, checked out parts. So we did a procedure where we spoke to them. I had her do a guided imagery. We went back in time. We rescued them out of the situation they were in, brought them into present time. And then once they were in present time, did some healing and had a huge change from that.
That's fantastic. So let me make sure, I want to make sure I understand something. So if someone had the symptoms, say sexual abuse, like you mentioned, and they weren't ready to hear it, deal with it, could you diffuse it without them having to relive it or to see that memory? Or would it be like, no, we could maybe get it to the point where they were, it wasn't as stressful, where then they were able to bring it up and look at it? Or could you just bypass that and just be like, okay, whatever this was, it's gone now?
It's difficult to answer that because people are so different.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has different ways of managing their difficult memories. Some people will put up a wall because it's whatever has happened to them is so horrible you can't get to it, and they will resist, or their energy will reverse or something like that. So it's best not to try to push through things. I find that walls are protective, and they're there for a reason, so I don't try to push through things. But there's ways that you can go around. You can go around this way and figure out a way to get in to handle the trauma indirectly. There's techniques that we use to do that. For example, I treated a woman that had a phobia of flying. And I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. She's had a problem with the plane previously. She's got claustrophobia, or she's afraid of heights. Well, it wasn't any of those. She had been sexually abused when she was 7. And I said to her, I don't know why I'm saying this to you, but I just feel like saying, who held you down? And she said, well, when I was 7, my grandfather held me down on a couch and molested me, and I never told anyone. And I said, well, that's the reason that you can't get on a plane, because metaphorically speaking, the sexual abuse transferred itself onto the flying experience. How? The common denominators: held down by the seatbelt, no escape, you're trapped, metaphorically. You have no control, the pilot has it, you can't get away. And so her body, mind, having held that molest experience in her psyche and in her body, didn't want to have anything to do with the flying experience. So we treated the sexual abuse, the fear of flying went away by itself. Sometimes that happens. It's a complete metaphor, and people can't even believe where we end up, but there it is.
I'd like you to talk a little bit more about your body metaphors, because that has so much, you bring that so much into your EFT work, and I think it's really fascinating. I think you have a whole list that I know if people are interested in, we'll tell them at the end of the show how they can get that. But I think that's just so great. Can you share a couple examples from that?
Sure. One of the most common ones is back pain. And there's a lot of metaphors about the back. So if you have back pain, assuming that you haven't been in a car accident, there's nothing wrong with your X-rays, and you don't have an injury, we can assume that it might be emotional. So I might say to someone, has anyone stabbed you in the back? Do you want somebody to get off your back? Is somebody not backing you up? Do you feel unsupported? Do you feel betrayed? Is your back up against the wall? And then people start thinking, okay, all right, all right, who is it? What's the issue? And then off we go with the EFT. And the back pain will sometimes release very quickly. So pain can sometimes be emotionally based. If the pain is not physical, and you've done everything physical and medical to get rid of it, then what could it be? It must be an emotional, what they call somatized, which means that the emotion becomes into physical body and sits there. I've had that many, many times. I treated a special forces soldier that had a chronic pain in his shoulder. And as we began to work with his survivor guilt, because one of his soldiers was killed, and he actually had to watch the guy die because he was pinned down by fire and he couldn't get to him. He felt horrible. He felt guilty. He felt responsible. As we began to tap about that, the pain in his shoulder just released. Very, very interesting, the body-mind connection. I wish doctors were trained in that. They'd maybe write fewer prescriptions.
Oh, absolutely. Is there, could you lead us in a short demo of tapping?
Well, sure. I need a subject. Who's got something?
Does anyone want to call in with a subject, or put something up, a question on the chat that they perhaps have been working on or would like to improve? We'll give everyone a moment or two to do that. Oh, so here you
I
can
tell
call
you-
in. Let me give you the numbers again. If they don't, I'm just going to have a chance for everyone to call in. If not, I'm going to let you suggest maybe what you find a lot of people is fairly common. You can call us at 919-576-9549 or 919-851-3858 or put your question on chat. Oh, here we go. We've got a caller. Hello.
Hi, my name. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
You need to turn down your computer and listen to the phone only.
Okay,
Otherwise, it's going to throw you off.
Okay, now I've got my computer sound off.
Hey, what's your name?
Barbara.
Hey,
Allen.
Barbara. Thanks for calling in. What do you have a topic you'd like Sue to lead us in a demonstration to tap out?
Yes. I have been having pain sitting probably for about 2 weeks now, and it's not all the time, but it's often, and it feels like my sacrum is not stable right now.
So, Sue, can I
Okay.
take a stab at a metaphor in that? Is there a pain in her ass?
Oh, well, that's one that it might be. Well, the first thing I would ask her is, as you tune into that pain in your sacrum or you put your hand in the area there, is there an emotion that might be attached there? Or if there was, what would you guess it would be?
Extreme annoyance.
Okay. Is that
The other metaphor that actually is very relevant is it does feel like somebody has peppered my butt with birdshot. So.
okay? All right. So did somebody come from behind and what? Betray you or target you?
It was a betrayal experience that happened a few weeks ago.
Okay. Okay. So is that like a stab in the back?
No, interestingly, not at all. Is it all right to say what the actual trauma was?
As long as you don't swear,
Sure.
we get beat up by the FTC. Just say nice words. That's all we ask.
Only nice words. I feel very betrayed by my family of origin. Between my mother and my brother who's in prison, they gave a lot of personal information out, including personal details, my address. There's pictures of me in this prison now, and I started getting letters from inmates like wanting to be my friend, and I feel very betrayed at this point.
Okay. All right. So that's betrayal of trust. And your tribe has betrayed you. That's a root chakra issue. Okay, let's do some tapping
That's
on.
where I'm feeling it.
What number on the 1 to 10 scale is the pain and the sense of betrayal?
If I'm just bopping around in the world, it's about a 3. But if I'm trying to sleep at night, sometimes it'll go up to about an 8.
Okay. Okay. Would you say you're hanging on to it because why are you hanging on to it?
Maybe because I don't know how to make myself safe and still be part of this family.
Okay. All right. Do some tapping. Tap on the side of your hand
Nope.
and say, even though my family betrayed me,
Even though my family betrayed me,
and even though, would you say, I've never been able to trust them? Is that true?
okay, the sound just cut out for me.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you again now.
Okay. Would you say it's accurate to say I've never been able to trust them?
On some level, yes.
Okay. And even though I can't trust them,
Even though I can't trust them,
and they've invaded my life,
it would be more obvious. I mean, it feels like it would be more like even though they've allowed other dangerous people to invade my life.
okay, I accept myself even though they've violated me.
I accept myself even though they have violated me.
Okay. Tap on your eyebrow and just say, they put my picture up in the prison.
I put my...
Tap outside the eye. I can't believe they did it.
I can't believe they did it.
Tap under the eye. First class betrayal. I didn't deserve this.
Didn't deserve this. They
Tap under your nose. I can't believe that this even happened to me.
I can't believe this even happened to me.
Go to the underneath your lip. This betrayal that I'm sitting on.
This betrayal that I'm sitting on.
Go to the collarbone. This horrible betrayal of trust.
This horrible betrayal of trust.
My own family has betrayed me.
The sound cut out. The something betrayed me.
My own family betrayed me.
My own family betrayed me.
Tap underneath your arm, 4 inches down. This I still feel like it feels to me like a stab in the back, but you can use your own words. This betrayal of trust. My own family betrayed me and put me at risk.
My own family betrayed me and put me at risk.
Okay, we're going to do a little shortcut. Tap on the top of your head. This anger and betrayal stuck in my lower back.
Not my lower back, it's my butt.
My butt or my sacrum. This anger and betrayal that I'm sitting on.
This anger and betrayal that I'm sitting on, and as I say that, yes, there is a little bit of stabbing in the back that I can feel.
Yeah.
Right at the level of the heart.
It's difficult sometimes to admit that, because you feel the anger and really there's hurt under there. It's such a disrespect. It's a betrayal. It's incredible. There's all those emotions. What I would suggest that you do is tune into your heart as well as the sacrum and write down the emotions that you feel when you just kind of free associate the emotions and take those one at a time and tap on those and then see what happens. And you can drop me an email and let me know what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, the heart's about the last thing I want to feel right now.
I know.
So
You've got to take care of yourself. Sometimes people will do this, but we always have to take care of ourselves when they disappoint us. We have to just say, okay, I can't trust these people, and move on.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the call. Take care.
Thank you.
So Sue,
You're welcome.
So Sue,
Yes.
about how many times, if this woman was to come into your office and you were going to have a session about that, would you keep tapping and going through that routine until it got, say, I believe she said sometimes it's a 3, sometimes it's higher when she's going to bed. Would you work on that until it was a 1?
Well, when you're working on something, you want to work on it until it's a 0, until it's completely neutralized. Because a lot of times you'll start with something and then it'll morph into another issue and another layer will come up. When you're working with energy, you just have to follow the flow because you're unwinding things that have been layered and layered and layered. So you have to follow it until you get to the end, until the person feels that there's no sting, there's no charge whenever they think about the issue. So there's something that happens in the brain when we do this tapping. And I've had many people say, well, I don't know, if I feel like laughing. And I'll say, well, you were crying about this 3 minutes ago, or you were terrified, or how can you laugh? And they'll say, I don't know, I just feel like laughing. I feel so relieved. There's a serotonin release, or I don't know what it is in the brain, but even the Special Forces soldier that I was referring to earlier said that. He says, I can't believe this. I feel like laughing. It's very interesting.
It is very interesting. And I had a question that was on the tip of my tongue, and I know what it was. When I heard you speak a couple years ago, I don't remember what it was called. It was what I'd call a trauma scale, and it talked about, say, if you had a trauma as a child and then another one in your teens, and it kind of compounded that. Can you talk about that scale a little bit? Because I thought that was pretty interesting.
I think you're referring to the ACE study.
Yes.
Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Yes,
right.
That's what it was.
anybody that's listening can go to this website. It's a landmark study that I think proves the body-mind connection. The study proved a graded relationship, in other words, a graded correlation between the types of traumas and punishment or betrayals, the main wounding that you have in childhood, and your correlation to getting a life-threatening illness in adulthood. The website for that is acestudy.org. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So, for example, there's, I believe, 9 questions, and there's a quiz at the bottom of the homepage that anyone can take and get their own ACE score. But it's things like contact sexual abuse, physical abuse, violence, witnessing violence against the mother, somebody in your family is a drug addict, somebody goes to prison. Sometimes people can be traumatized worse by witnessing abuse than what happens to themselves.
Oh, that's
Sometimes
very interesting.
A parent will pick out a child. They call it the container kid in a family, that everybody heaps all their abuse, emotional or physical or whatever, on this one person. And the other kids get traumatized by watching that person suffer.
So then people...
So it doesn't be just that. It can be witnessing.
So then people like police officers, maybe ER responders, might have suffered trauma if they're constantly seeing that in their job and not even be aware of it. So they would sound like people who would definitely benefit from EFT.
Mm-hmm. I think that people that are first responders, statistically, they don't live as long after they retire. There's a higher rate of suicide among police officers, doctors. I think doctors are the number one profession to commit suicide, but police officers as well. They die of heart attacks. Firemen, they see the worst of society.
Mm-hmm.
They deal with trauma all the time. Picking up a child that's been hit by a drunk driver that's dead. No, they may have a 7-year-old at home, and this is a 7-year-old that's, laying in the street. So you cannot continually fill up your mind and your body with all that pain without a release.
Mm-hmm.
Alcoholism is a release, but it's not one I would recommend. I think healing is much better, and I'm hoping that people will, with the holistic movement now that's really gaining speed as the cost of health insurance goes through the roof, more and more people are looking at how they can stay healthy and how they can heal themselves. So it's a real movement, and it's gaining speed all over the place.
Can you talk about other types of people that would benefit from your services? I know, for instance, hoarders are a population that you have treated or interested in treating, and you mentioned a couple different areas on your website. Could you share that? I want to give other people, we've talked about sexual abuse, we've talked about PTSD, combat veterans. What other groups of people have you found benefit from your services?
Well, sometimes people are caught in patterns that they don't know how to get out of. Mm-hmm. They've been given core beliefs by their parents, by a teacher, by the church. And these negative beliefs or limiting beliefs run their lives like a computer, and they cannot get out of it no matter what they do. They do affirmations, they take self-help classes, they take workshops, they've got a wall full of books, and they can't seem to get out of it. So a lot of what I do is when I do a reading, the core beliefs will come out. Here's a few. The number one umbrella belief is I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately, there's no treatment for that per se, because low self-esteem and feeling worthless and feeling that you're not good enough is the result of a whole lot of stuff, prior to that. That's kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. But core beliefs such as I don't matter, I was unwanted. Mm-hmm. There's 5 main wounds that most emotional patterns can be traced back to, and they are abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, injustice, and rejection. Mm. So the issues that people have around those 5 main wounds, fear of abandonment is huge. If you fear abandonment, you can't get out of a bad relationship. What if you're alone? Oh my gosh, Mm-hmm. So these core issues need to be released, and otherwise people can't move forward. So that's one. Addictions is huge. I view addictions as anesthesia for pain. Mm-hmm. I've treated a number of addicts, and unless they are putting a needle in their arm or they're a blackout drunk, in which case I send them to a doctor immediately. You can be addicted to a lot of things. You can be addicted to a system of thought, to over exercising, to shopping, internet porn, eating, smoking. It doesn't matter, in my view, what it is per se. All that means is this person is using anesthesia. What's the pain? So when they tell me what they're addicted to, I say to them, what happened to you? And then we're off into the trauma again. Addictions is really just trauma treatment.
So, we're going through a stressful economic time. Someone might be in very bad shape and might be listening in and just be in a lot of pain. What would you say to them? They might be like, oh my gosh, it's never going to end. What would you say to them?
Well, anxiety is something that everybody has to some degree. That we live in a world and in a system that there is no safety. Some people would come in and say, well, I just have anxiety because I don't know what's going to happen next. And sometimes I use the direct approach. Sometimes I say, well, you know what? If you're married, you're a heart attack away from being a widow. You're a car accident away from being killed. There is no security. You're a crash, a Wall Street crash away from losing all the money you have. So, let's stay in present time and do the best we can. Anxiety is very draining, and I think that it requires a certain degree of faith to get over it. I can't imagine how people get through life without faith in some type of higher power or the universe, because the human condition is limited and the universe and God is unlimited. So if we are co-creators and we do have that kind of power, which it says in most of the holy books that we do, it's a co-creative process between us and the divine. I steer them in that direction if I can. Some people have been spiritually abused. I say this in my book, and I don't mean to be light about it because it's really tragic, but people that tell me that have childhood trauma and everything, and then they say, well, then I went to Catholic school for 12 years. I just get out another piece of paper and all right, it's going to be another 2 months, here's another layer. Because until recently, there was a lot of spiritual abuse in not only the Catholic Church. A lot of churches have wounded people spiritually as well as emotionally, and I just think it's terrible. But it just happened. So there's a lot of areas where people need to look at what's happened to them and what they've decided as a result of it. Those are the core beliefs and how it affects their lives.
And so if someone were to see you for EFT and to get rid of some of those layers, and also EFT is something, obviously you just did a demonstration tonight that's really easy to learn, and it's something like I can go for the Ben and Jerry's when I get home and do that to help decrease anxiety. So that's something that I think is really great about it. I think what's wonderful about you is you're able to diagnose, kind of get to the root or wherever they were able to start with, but at some point they could go and do EFT on themselves, which we live in a much better world. If everyone's doing EFT instead of, having road rage, they tap it down and then they'd be okay.
Right. I think that the reading is, it's a very good tool because it kind of gives us a blueprint for what has gone wrong in someone's life. And it takes us back to the deepest roots of that issue. Some of the readings they have a lot of in-person quotes, first-person quotes. I'll get the imagery or the perception of I'm unwanted, they didn't want me. Sometimes in the womb, it can imprint that if you are one gender and your parents want the other, you'll know that and feel that, and you'll have a perception of being defective or unwanted. There's a book called Voices from the Womb. It's very fascinating. It's a book that was written by a hypnotherapist, and he regressed adults back to their time in the womb, and they told him everything that was going on. And then he verified it with the parents and with medical records.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, our consciousness is like a hard drive that's spinning, even in the womb and in infancy and childhood. So when I do a reading, I just get someone's name and age, and we say a prayer. I believe that in my case, it's spiritually discerned. It's a divine download. The prayer is basically, let me know what I need to know to help this person. And I just get their name and age, and I start writing. And it becomes a map for what we need to heal and the issues that they are being blocked on. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't know what is going on until they read it. Sometimes I'll just give somebody the paper to read and they'll start crying because it just hits them that this is their core issue.
That's what happened. We had someone who concurred with you, said fascinating book. The one that you just mentioned. So if someone else has read it, that sounds really great. One thing that's really important to me about doing this show, Sue, is to incite people into action. You know, maybe it's not necessarily that they start EFT tomorrow, but what would you say to people listening? What one step could they take today, they could take now to reawaken their brilliance?
I would say be honest about your good qualities. There's so much negativity in the world, and we have these reality shows and models and actors and actresses that are so allegedly perfect, and people are trying to be that way. To awaken your brilliance is to know that you came here with gifts and abilities that are unique to you, that everybody has a soul mission, that we're all interconnected, that we're all here to help each other and to affect each other's lives, and to know that the law of attraction is operating, which means when you, scripturally it says when what you sow, you shall also reap. In the metaphysical, it says what goes around comes around. To give your gifts the credit that they deserve, even if someone doesn't, is important. That's because there's a lot of naysayers. There will be people, if you tell them your plans, they'll say, oh, you can't do it, and here's why. And they can just really rain on your parade. First of all, don't tell people your plans because they will be negative, usually. And two, even if they are, go for it anyway. Follow your heart.
Absolutely. Sue was, when I started my business over 2 years ago, Sue was one of the first people that knew about it. And we were talking last night. I had forgotten. She said, oh, yeah, you were super scared. You were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I was like, really? I mean, I'd just forgotten it because it was one of those things. I felt the fear and did it anyway because I knew that it's what I needed to do. And it was funny having someone remind me of that. You know, I had a lot of people. It's interesting. You have to be very careful who you share that with. And so I was very careful to share that mission and goal of mine with people that I knew would be supportive. And every time someone was negative, I just came up with a standard answer. You know, more millionaires came out of the Great Depression than any other time in our country's history, and that shut them up. So, you know, I encourage people to come up with something that they can just say to the naysayers. So, Sue, do you have any upcoming events? I know you're working on a book, but are you doing any talks or anything else that's coming up that we can tell people about?
I don't have anything scheduled right now, but while I'm here in North Carolina, I'd like to be able to teach some classes. So if anybody is interested in some classes, all they need to do is send me a letter on the email, and or go to my website and indicate that's what they want. And I only need probably 10 people to teach a class. We'll get some classes going. We can teach them in Raleigh, or we can teach them down here in Sanford, where I am right now.
Fantastic. Now, what's your website so people know how to reach you? Give a website or phone number or whatever, Social Security, whatever you're comfortable with.
My website is guidedhealing.com.
Great.
My phone number is on there.
Okay, fantastic. And there's an email if they want to contact you, they can find that on the site. Yeah,
my email is Erase PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, Erase PTSD at AOL. And if anybody wants that list of metaphors, I think it's 5 pages. Just send me an email and put metaphors in the subject line, and I'll be happy to send you the list of metaphors.
Fantastic. And that's guidedhealing.com, correct?
Right.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Sue. This was great. I hope everyone appreciated everything that we learned about EFT tonight. The show will rerun right after this, and you'll be able to see it at any time. Find Reawaken Your Brilliance on Facebook, on Twitter, and the website's coming shortly. When you pay in babysitting hours, it takes a little longer than people who actually pay in money. But thank you for listening, everyone, and go out there and reawaken your brilliance.